So thank you for joining us to be on the podcast. What I want to do today really is capture your story, but also understand a bit more about your business and how your business could support the audience. So to give you a bit of an insight, the audience for the Human CEO are often, they're either leaders or people that aspire to be leaders. So first question then, Deevo, can you tell us a little bit about you and your journey?
Yeah, I have, it's traditional for some, non-traditional for others. I grew up in a really large family I'm one of 12. And I tell you that only because I didn't realize until looking back, how I got where I am in terms of my early start. I've always been an entrepreneur. I just didn't know I was an entrepreneur. And part of that was because I didn't have a choice. My dad would beat the shit out of me if I didn't do the chores and things like that. But we didn't have any money. And so true story, my dad actually collected, this is kind of after the fact, we all had our own jobs in various ways. And my dad would actually collect our money. And I don't even know why to this day he did it. So I always had to find more jobs and I wouldn't report that money. So he was like the early IRS for me in America. So I had to go out and find a job. And so I launched a lawn mowing business. I had a paper delivery route. When it snowed, when I lived in Colorado, I did snow clearing off snows with people's driveways. And then I had a bunch of other little things that I was doing. But I didn't know that was entrepreneurial. It was just sort of a necessity thing. I wanted to have money because we didn't have money. And, so yeah. So that's where it all began. I took the typical route. I didn't have any sort of mentorship or education. My dad was not the type of father that, he would say, hey, there's poster boy for parenting. And we'll just leave it at that. Unless you want to have a podcast about that. That's a whole different conversation. But my therapist needs to be here for that one. But I went to school, went to college. I played sports in college, so I got a full ride scholarship. Thank you for that. Otherwise, I would not have been able to do what I did. I graduated from college and I went straight into the corporate world. I was blessed enough to be talented enough to do a few things, and I have a decent head on my shoulders. So, I didn't really kind of fall into like the typical paradigm. And there were some people who took notice of that, and I got hired into a really cool program it was an executive management development program. And I was only one of a few people in the whole world that was hired into that program. And I'm not telling that to brag, even though I should. But anyway, I got exposed to, it was a Fortune 50 company. And so right away, like my wings are literally wet and I'm thrown in the mix. And I got to work with some of the brightest people in business as like 18 years old. And I was exposed as part of this program. I got exposed to every element of the business, from IT to technology to marketing and business and branding and business and sales and all the things. And I really shone in the business development and the marketing and branding side. Like that was my thing. Cause I've always been creative. Like I'm a painter and, all the things. And so not a very good one, but I still love to do that stuff. And so early on, I got exposed to all this really cool stuff. And so I did that, and I'll fast forward. I graduated from the program. I went into a high level management position right away. And I did the corporate thing for like 15 years. But I've always had a camera in my hand. So since I was like a little boy, I've had a camera in my hand. In fact, I stole my first camera, and it was just sort of like a passion for me. I love taking photographs. It's just like, that's my thing. Like if I go to heaven, sure as hell better be cameras there, because that's just what I love to do. So, even while I was working, I was taking photographs all the time. And then I got married, and I'm going somewhere with the story. You're like, dude, get to the point. But I'm going to the story. So I got married, and we hired this photographer, and it was like $4,500 back in the day. And I didn't see my photos for like a year, like maybe more than a year. Yeah. And this was before social media and cell phones. So like if you wanted to track your photos, like you had to get on your horse and, trot across town to find the cat. And it's like, he didn't have an office, and you never find him. And it was like, shit, it's like the wild, wild west right now. So, so I finally did get my photos, and, I'm being conservative when I say they were awful. And I was like, this dude just took $4,500 from me, took a year to get me my photos. And they were like, literally, again, awful. And so I was like, I'm not even a photographer, but I could take better photos than that. Like I truly could have. And I was like, I didn't realize that this is something you could make this kind of money. And I just thought it was like, people did this for a hobby. And so I set about at that point in time, starting to like figure out how could I make money with my camera? Because it wasn't something I'd ever thought about before, which sort of led me down to the critical thinking rabbit hole. It's like, am I really happy doing what I'm doing right now? Like, is this really filling all my buckets for me? And I was like, shoot, somebody opened up a can of worms for me. And it just sort of capitulated from there. I was like, there's no way in hell. And there was a dude, have you ever seen the movie, Office Space, or The Office, I think it's called. Office Space, I think it's called. It's an American movie. If you haven't seen it, it's worth watching, especially if you work in the business world. I think it's called The Office, or The Office Space. Anyway, there's a dude in there named Milton who's been working for the company for like 150 years. And all he does every day is he staples these reports and he hands them in. And I was just like, I don't want to be Milton. I need to do something bigger and better with my life. I have no idea what that is, but like, this can't be the end game for 50 years. Like, there's just no way. And the whole idea of like working for a company for 50 years and getting 2.5 weeks of vacation and living in a white house with a white picket fence and 2 dogs and 3 kids, blah, blah, blah. I'm just like, that doesn't sound like what I'm cut out for. And so I set out to find a way to get out of that, and it led to photography, and photography led me to where I am today. So that was a really long story, but hopefully there was a couple of morsels you got from that.
Absolutely. And so you mentioned previously that you were really entrepreneurial, and it seems that like you mentioned about the critical thinking, were you always then because you could have gone out and found a photography house, or you could have gone out and found a marketing organization to work with, but you decided to start up on your own. Where does that come from? Is that from your early life?
I don't know. My grandfather told me this when I was a little kid. I was close with my grandfather. He was like, I could literally drop you anywhere at any point in time and leave you there and come back 2 hours later, and you would have organized the townspeople or whoever was there, and you would have had a game going on, or you would have people cleaning up or doing something. Like I've just always been in a leadership position, and I don't know what that is. Other than, those were the gifts that I was given. And so I've always been in that position, and I have a really good eye for seeing the big picture of things. And I just have always been that way. I'm a sort of like a big thinker. I've always questioned everything. I don't take anything as it is. Like, if you tell me something, I'm like, okay, I'm going to write that down and record it, and I'm going to go do some research on it and see if that's actually true before I get on board and just be like blindly say, oh, okay, Amy, I'll follow you. So I've always been that type of person. And so I think that's just and I think, with my own podcast and my own work now, most entrepreneurs and I don't qualify myself in this category as a great leader, but most great leaders that I see sort of share a lot of those same tenable qualities, in sense that they question everything. They look at things from multiple angles. They want to understand the purpose behind it. And they like to sort of, once they figure it out, okay, I like this, I'm going to take this and lead with that. And so that's always been kind of my modality for whatever reason. And entrepreneurship just came to me. It was really accidental. It just kind of fell into my hands, and I was like, okay, I kind of like doing this shit. This is pretty cool. So yeah.
I can do this. Yeah. Awesome. And so you mentioned that your grandfather called it a gift. Does that mean then that have you had to work at that skill, or does it just still come really naturally?
Oh, you have to work at things every day. If you don't work and continue learning, it's like a blade. I like to cook, and I have to sharpen my blade on a regular basis. Eventually it goes dull. So no, I mean, I think personally speaking, everyone on the planet has gifts. Some people have greater gifts. Like, I will never be a Michael Jordan and dunk a basketball. I'm a 6'2" white dude who can't jump, but put me on a basketball court and I'll be one of the best foulers and defenders you'll ever find. And so I think that everybody has gifts, and it's really important to know what your gifts are, and then you can learn to develop them further. And then the more you learn to develop them further, the more gifts sort of kind of fall into that space. And so it's sort of like, it's like a self-promotion machine. The more you work on it, the more things come in line. It's like, if you very actively go after surrounding yourself with cool people. Like, for example, my podcasting, I'll use it as an example. I'm very, very meticulous about the type of shows that I get to show up on. And because of that activity, that proactive development and nurturing of that, I get to find more Amy's that I get to show up on their show for. And it's like, it just kind of becomes a self-feeding machine. So everybody has a set of tangible characteristics. It's our job to figure out what they are, what we like doing, what we're passionate about, and then go after and develop them every single day.
Awesome. And what was your process for identifying what your gift was? How do you know which skills to sharpen?
It was probably a reverse engineered process. I don't know that I have not practically sought out any of that stuff until really my true renaissance has been the last 10 years of my life. Before that, it was like a reverse engineering. I didn't really have a purpose or a strategy. I knew what I really liked to do. And then, so I was like, okay, I'm going to take photographs. So I'm going to go into the photography world. And the more I took photographs, I started to realize, okay, I want to take a very specific type of photograph. And then once I started to really follow in that rabbit hole, it's like, okay, I not only want to take photographs, but a very specific type of photography, but I also want to work with a very specific type of person. And so it just, like I said, it just sort of self-capitulates and builds upon each other. So my process was reverse engineered. And then I got divorced 13 years ago. And I was like, everything came to a screeching halt. And I was like, okay, great. Now what? Where do I go from here? And it was a defining moment in my life because I sort of had to come to terms and grips with, I had failed at something. I'd never really had a lot of failure in my life. I've been blessed with a decent amount of success in everything I've done. And for the first time, I failed at something. And so being the person that I am, I had to uncover, why did I fail? So like I found a therapist. I started going to therapy. I started changing my friend circle. I started doing all sorts of things. And it's just a weird thing when you start working on yourself, like everything else starts to kind of work out. It's like you change your innerness, your outerness starts to match that. And then that's sort of how it all just started kind of falling in place for me.
Amazing. And it makes perfect sense. It makes perfect sense, yeah. And so tell me about where you are now. So tell me about the holistic branding, because all of that journey has led to you building the agency that you have now. And I'm fascinated. But you talk about unapologetic branding, you talk about holistic branding, and I want to understand what you mean by that. So can you tell us a bit about your organization, please?
Yeah, so I came into this by accident as well. I was running my photography business, very successful photography business, and I started getting, I talked about the type of work I wanted to do. I was shooting a lot of weddings originally, and then a lot of just what I call human photography, and I love that. It created a vehicle for me to progress. But, I have 2 daughters, and I was working, at the peak of my business, I was shooting like 100 weddings a year, and I do a lot of destination weddings. So I was traveling all over the world, and I was missing out on my children, and I wasn't able to see the things that were going on. Like I couldn't go to they play soccer and gymnastics and lacrosse and debate team and all these things. And I was like, I'm literally not seeing my kids grow up. So I've got to figure something else out. So I changed my marketing a little bit. I changed my branding a little bit. I changed my website a little bit. And I started working with business professionals and organizations and shooting headshots and event photography. And then the next thing you know, I was shooting branding content and all these sorts of things for companies. And I really love that. And so in that process of delivering their work, photos and videos, I started to notice, because, social media came around. And at that point, you start to see, I would follow all my clients, and I was like, they're not posting any of my photos and videos. Like, am I delusional here? All my content sucks. Like, what's going on, buddy? So I had to all right, I'm just going to get on the phone and call people. I'll be like, yo, Pam, okay, what the fuck's going on? How come you haven't posted a single one of those amazing photos? And Pam would be like, I don't really know how to post them. I don't know what's going on. So I would call Amy. I'm like, Amy, where is the badass video we just did last week? Or last month? And Amy would be like, I don't know what to do with this. So I was like, shit, there's a gap here. And I realized this gap was that because I was working with a lot of entrepreneurs, these were smaller businesses and entrepreneurs. And I realized that, they're Swiss Army knives, right? Like they're doing all these things and they're running all different parts of their business, and social media and marketing kind of fell by the wayside. So I was like, okay, there's a gap that needs to be filled here. How can I fill that? And, I come from this background of business development and marketing and PR and branding, like that's who I am at my core. So I was like, okay, let's think about this. So I came back to Amy and I was like, Amy, what if I could take your content for you and do something with it? And, whether it's social media management or building it into a website and all these things. And she's like, well, that would be great. How much would that cost? And I was like, I don't know. I'll do it for free. I have no idea. Let's just play with this and see what this sandbox looks like. And so that's where it all began. And so then I went out and started finding people, just like I was telling them to do, finding people who could build websites, finding people who could manage social media. And I built this team around me that can do all the things that I'm not very necessarily great at and don't necessarily want to do, and telling my clients to do. And that's where Fusion Creative was born. So I run this business now called Fusion Creative. My photography business still exists. And I'll still shoot weddings if it's destination. Thank you. but we fill the gaps for you, and we partner with organizations to become your marketing and branding team so that you don't have to go out and hire 26 people to do that. I've built that model for you, and then we partner with you in its branding, its content creation, its photo, video marketing, paid advertising, website design, all the things that fall within that suite of business.
Where does the unapologetic branding come from? Is that helping people find their voice or helping people be authentic? How does that land?
I mean, turn on your phone right now and go to Instagram, and you tell me how many people are basically competing for the same set of eyeballs, right? And so how many guests have you had on your show in the last year on your podcast? Let's say 50. A good number, 50? Of those 50, I would venture to guess, and you don't have to confess to me right now, we can do it offline in the green room, that there's probably 3 or 4 people that really stood out to you. There was like, they got their shit together, they were fun to talk to, and there's always going to be something within that conversation that stood out to you that sort of made them different from everyone else. And it's whether what they say, it's what they talk about, it's the fact that they don't have a filter, it's the fact that they're maybe very organic or authentic. Everybody has sort of like their different paradigm. And in a sense of social media and branding and marketing, it's the people who are willing to take risks. Anyone who is successful will tell you they're successful because they were willing to put themselves on the line. They were willing to take risks. They were willing to be themselves. They were willing to stand out in a sea of sameness. They weren't afraid to go against the grain. They were willing to say, this is what I fucking believe in. I'm raising my flag, and come hell or high water, this is who I am and what I'm going to do. And those are the people who are unapologetic about it. And those are the people that stand out from the sea of sameness. And so I'm like, my premise on branding and marketing is, if you want to sell to people, you have to be unique. You have to stand out from people. You cannot just do the exact same thing everyone else is doing, because then you look like everyone else. And so how can you take what you're really, really good at, you're really, really passionate about, and then profess that to an audience that is directly in corollary alignment with you on that? And the only way to do that is to be unapologetic about who you are. Like, don't be afraid to step into your uniqueness, because everyone else is already taken. There's only one you. Just be you. And so that's unapologetic branding at the core of it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And if it's authentic, it's consistent.
Yeah. And I better be one of those podcasters that you like in the green room.
You will.
I want to be one of the 50, okay?
You will. Absolutely. Absolutely. Do you know what? When you said that, though, I can't think of anyone that I've interviewed that I thought, I don't know why you're on the show, or I don't think we can share this. I think everybody's kind of had something in terms, you talk about everybody's got a gift. Everybody's got something. There's always been a nugget, and whether that was the delivery or the message, and that's why I love doing what I do. I absolutely.
Well, then you were doing a fantastic job at targeting in on who you want to speak to, and I can't say the same for everyone else. And even my own show, sometimes, no offense for who's listening to this, I've had people on the show that I'm like, I don't know, I'm not really sure if this is gonna fly. So, but yeah, okay.
I better not be one of those people then.
No, well, you gotta get signed up for the show first, Amy.
Okay, we'll do that.
All right.
And the other thing that I want to talk to you about is also, you mentioned that the entrepreneurs of the Swiss Army knives, and I cannot, as one of them, cannot agree more. But in terms of practical tips for generating that content, and I don't know whether it's documenting instead of creating or whatever the tips are, what tips have you got for the leaders that are out there that are listening, that are thinking, I need to get my message out there? Where do I start? What do I capture?
Yeah, hire me.
Besides that.
I think really the documenting, creating, that's sort of secondary. It's like a tertiary piece of it. I really think first and foremost, understand your purpose around what it is you're trying to do, not only with your business, right? Like, what is your foundation to build this brand? Why did you get into this business in the first place? Why did you start this audacious idea that you have? And within that paradigm, take some time and some energy. And you can do this. You don't need to hire me. Like, you can Google this stuff on how to figure it out. You may not do it as well as I could. You might do it better than me, but nonetheless, the information is out there, right? Like you can literally Google how to basically do anything on the planet right now, right? Like literally anything. So the key things that you would want to do is establish your foundation, just like a home, right? You build a home, you don't start with the roof first, you build out a foundation, and then you flesh in the wood and all the other things that happen. So your business is the same thing. get a foundation of like, what are the core essence of what your business is, does, why, who, what, where, why, how, all the things, and understand that until it becomes part of your blood and your DNA. And, this is your mission, this is your purpose, this is your values. What values do you hold near and dear to your heart and that you want to stand for in everything you do? And what's your messaging? It's really, really clear and critical that you have to crystallize what your brand message is. And your brand message is, what do I stand for? What do I believe in? What are my values? What is my mission? What is my purpose? And what problem do I solve? And once you have those down and they become part of your DNA or your team's DNA, then you have a foundation. The rest is sort of just filling in the blanks, right? But have some clarity on what those things are, because it's like GPS coordinates. Then you know where to go. Like I have my coordinates up here. I know that this is what we do. This is why we do it. I have my North Star to follow now, and the rest just sort of falls in place. And here's what happens with that. When you have clarity around that, you're now speaking to the right person. Because not everyone else is going to pick up on that frequency, right? But the people who are playing in that sandbox, or are looking for that solution, or are looking for your product, or Googling for that service, whatever it may be, they're going to find it because your language matches the frequency of what they're looking for, right? So on social media, as I'm scrolling or typing in hashtags or whatever it is, and I'm looking for really cool podcasts with guests from the UK who have a funny disposition and aren't afraid to have conversations, Amy's Human CEO podcast pops up. And I was like, Amy and I connected because we had a foundational alignment with the things that we believed in, and our North Stars were in the same trajectory, and we sort of played on the same radio channel, if you will. And when you have that, you're not going to be like trying to work for everybody all the time. You're working for the right type of people, and you're doing work for the right type of people that are in alignment with who you are and what you believe in. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. It kind of echoes the Simon Sinek, the aim is not to work with everybody, it's to work with people who believe what you believe. It's along those lines, isn't it?
Absolutely. It's not original work. What I'm saying is parroted by all the great leaders around the world, but it's crazy. It's like we have all this information at our fingertips, but not everybody chooses to follow it, right? So my job is to take that information from Simon Sinek or, hopefully the Deevos of the world and say, like, here's how you can build this. And these are the tried, because Simon Sinek didn't come up with it by himself. Some, Epictetus or somebody from a great Roman civilization had it, one of the great Stoics or Buddhist philosophers. They all said this before us. So it's like, we know it works, man. Like, look, here's the proof. Like, just do it already.
Cliches are cliches for a reason, aren't they? Like, they're true. Like you say, it's been, you said it was been parroted, but for good reason. It makes perfect sense.
Absolutely. But for whatever reason, we don't listen to advice. Like, sometimes we get, here's the thing I was thinking about. I just got off the phone with the person before you, and she said something to me that I was like, this is why I started my business. She's like, I know all this to be true, but I just don't do it. And I was like, why don't you do it? She's like, I don't know. Like, I just get caught in my head, and I don't really know. Like, I have imposter syndrome. And I'm just like, but if you know it's true, then step into it. Like, just step into it. So my job is to hold you accountable, to show you the things that could be done. And then I hold you accountable to step into it. Like, my building of this house only works if you're building the house with me. And so, like, that's sort of like the value that we bring to the table. You can only lead a horse to water, though.
Yeah, true. But in terms of the content, so when you speak to your clients, really interested in this from a personal perspective. And if anyone's listening, I hope somebody agrees with me. However, on social media, my aim is always deliver value, tell them what I know. Information is free, like you say, there's information is out there. It's the implementation that is really valuable to people. So while I have information, I want to share it. But I often feel on social media, I'm just that boring dude in the kitchen talking about work. So how do you balance then the personal versus the professional? Because I want to deliver value. I don't want to post pictures of my food.
Well, I would suggest, first of all, to change your mindset around that. What if you're not that boring person that's posting content and there is somebody out there that values what you're posting? Because there is. You can't tell me in 8.5 billion people on the planet, there isn't somebody that values your amazing way of cooking asparagus that you pour lemon juice on, then you infuse it with like essential oils or whatever. Like, there's somebody out there that's like, holy shit, I love essential oils and lemon juice and asparagus. That's my person right there. Like, there's somebody, right? So
yeah, totally.
I would change that, but it's a little bit more to that, because unfortunately we have to play there's science involved now because, money got involved with it, and social media channels realize that they can control the paradigm if they control the paradigm, right? So the whole idea is to create content that adds value, that is consistently presented, that solves a problem, that inspires, that maybe educates or maybe entertains, and being very, very fundamentally strategic about that and make it look kind of good, right? Like don't just throw it up there and hope that it smatters and hits a point. So the whole idea around social media is to play within the rules so that you don't get kicked off to some extent, but at the same time be a bit rebellious, a bit provocative, and try to stand out and be unapologetic about it. And because the people that excel in that space are the people that are continually showing up consistently with content, the people that are always adding some sort of educational, inspirational value or entertainment, and the people who look relatively good at it. And so first and foremost, I would say, like, every piece of content you post, don't post it from your perspective, post it from the people who are viewing it and what's in it for them, right? What is my potential audience going to get from this? Like, don't say, hey, I love asparagus, so I'm just going to post it. That's great. But let me post, why do I love asparagus? And here's why I cook it this way. And I cook it this way. I don't know why I'm using asparagus as an example. I made asparagus last night, and it was really good.
Let's run with it.
Yeah. I was like, this is the best asparagus I've ever eaten. What the hell did you do to this? So, there's nothing worse than overcooked asparagus, by the way. So if you're posting overcooked asparagus, we are not going to be in alignment. I'm not going to like your photo. Okay.
Understood.
Yeah. So I think really just... it really kind of starts with having a strategy and a purpose, just like your business. Don't just post content to post content to post content. Be purposeful about it. Like, why is it that you want to show up and share your version of the world with someone else? Like, what can you expect to get out of it by me following you? Like, be very clear about that.
So to a certain extent, I am. But I think here's the question that I really want to ask: does all work and no play make Amy a dull girl in terms of what I'm posting? So it's always work related. It's always, can I add value? Can I help you? Do I need to post the pictures of going out for dinner? Does it need to be that sort of personal?
I need to see some personality from you. I want to know who you are and why I would want to sit and have a drink with you. I want to know why I would want to be in your kitchen, or I'd want to know why I'd want to be on your podcast. And you don't have to do that by like being overly gregarious and narcissistic, but like, an example, I was with NASCAR this past week, and I know people love NASCAR. I thought it was cool as shit, but I got to go down into the pits and hang with the drivers and stuff. So I took a couple of photos of people, and I was like, I just shared that because I thought it was kind of cool, and I thought someone else would appreciate seeing that. And people are like, oh my God, you're with Casey, you're with, and people are going crazy because I was like, yeah, like, and so you don't have to be like a narcissistic prick about it. You're not saying, hey, look at me all the time. And that's another thing. Like, we've become oversharers, and there's so much information out there. Like, how do you even sort through all of that anymore? And like, it's honestly, it's like, it's a bit pervasive now. So my sort of rule of thumb is like, there's a time and a place for it, and you should document, but that doesn't mean that you're documenting. You should also be posting right now per se. It just means document so that you have information that you can share at 6 o'clock in the morning when you batch your content, for example. So for me, like, I batch all of my content. I do it all in one big spell. I write all my content at once. I usually do it a week at a time. I collect all my photos and I plan everything out, and then I post. And that sort of gets you away from like, what should I post game? I have no idea what to do today. It gets you away from like scrambling to get something up. But more importantly, it enables you to have a consistent presence. Because once people start liking your asparagus photos, they're going to be like, okay, I want to see some more asparagus photos. Like, I expect Amy to post some more asparagus photos. So like, wait, where'd Amy go? She hasn't come back in 2 weeks. What the fuck happened to Amy? Did Amy like die? Like, so you have to be very consistent about it. And the best way to do that is to like, have a strategy. Here's how I want to show up. This is what I want to do. And write out some pillars. Like, I always tell people, use like the 3 to 5 pillars. These are my 3 to 5 things that I'm going to create content and document for my audience to see. And then one might be your podcast. One might be your dog that can do a flip in midair. Another one might be like your amazing travel. The other would be like your business stuff. Like, these are my insights to grow my podcast. So these are my insights. Like, have a theme and a purpose behind it, and then kind of just fill that in from the buckets, the pillars. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. It's good advice as well. You forgot the asparagus, but it's good advice otherwise.
I kept beating that asparagus. I was like, I'm going to go somewhere different with it.
Do you know what? When this goes out on socials, I'm not using your headshot. It's just going to be spears of asparagus. That's all that's going out there.
It's like a superimposed meme of asparagus.
That's it. Totally.
Give me some hair though. Give my asparagus some hair.
I'll see what I can do. And so what's next for you? What's on the cards and what's coming around the corner social media wise? What do we need to be aware of?
I'm just hitting my stride, so I don't know what's coming next. I'm really trying to grow this new business and social media. Wait, so there were two questions. Do you want to know what's next in social media world? Is that what your question was?
Yeah, answer me that first.
Oh, I thought we were going to talk about me.
We will.
Social media. I think that there's a massive shift going on to less curated content. People don't want to see perfect stuff. But that doesn't mean that you get away from an aesthetic. There should still be an aesthetic because we're psychologically drawn to pretty things. So you should have some consistency in the look and feel of what you're in. People are looking for value now. There are so many resources of information out there, and a lot of it sounds the same, and there's a lot of disinformation going on. And like we talked about earlier, you can get so much information, just a few clicks or a few swipes. So you have to be able to figure out, how can I make my information stand out and still add some value so that it doesn't look like everyone else's? So because everyone is looking for, there's never been more entrepreneurs in the history of the world than there are right now, right? And so because of that, there's even more content and more people trying to share their version of entrepreneurialism and why you should buy from them. So you're going to start seeing a lot more of that sort of stuff. That's why TikTok has basically blown up in America, because there are more entrepreneurs in America than any other country on the planet. And so the TikTok paradigm is completely different in America than it is in like Europe, for example, or China or anywhere else, or Mexico. Like, you go to Mexican TikTok, it does not look like American TikTok, and it's because they cater to their audience. So that's what you want to think about. Social media it's all about the audience now. It's not so much about me. Like, how can I provide some value to the people who are potentially looking at my content? And the age-old adage still stands true, is what I was talking about earlier, is provide some value, entertainment, but have a purpose behind your content. So because we have so much information at our disposal, we want to know why I would go and stop at this page. Like, what am I going to get from this page going forward, right? So have a consistent strategy and a purpose and fill that in on a regular basis. And that doesn't mean you have to post 15 times a day. Like, I post 2 or 3 times a week. And it doesn't mean you have to have 15,000 followers or 100,000 followers. Like, don't focus on the followers. The followers mean literally nothing. They literally mean nothing. What matters is, are you getting people to engage with you? And then the final piece of changing in social media is, it's no longer about me. It's about you. You should be out engaging with your audience. So imagine yourself at a physical location right now, and we're in a room right now, and I walked up to you and said hello. You wouldn't just turn your back and walk. Well, you might with me. You'd be like, what's this dude talking to me? But
depends if I knew about the asparagus, wouldn't it?
Yeah. So you want to be proactive about how you play in the social sandbox and be social. Go out and engage with people and build relationships with them. Let them know why they should come back and follow you. Like, and don't be about me. Be like, how can I add value, and engage with people, for Christ's sake. Like, I never understand. Like, I'll comment on someone's page and like they won't even respond back. And I'm like, that's the biggest fallacy you can make, especially if you don't have a huge presence on social media and your objective is to grow it. You should be engaging with people. If they're taking the time to engage with you, you would not turn around and walk away from someone if they said hello to you. So take some time to engage back, and then go out and follow people. I have a rule that I make 10 every morning when I do my social media, which is 3 times a week roughly. I go out and I put comments on 10 people's pages that I've never seen before, that are within the space of how I operate. They might be small business owners. They might be another marketing agency. And what it does is it puts your visible content in front of their audience, right? So think about it. Like, who do you follow? You're going to look at who's commenting on what page, and you're going to look. And if someone writes an interesting comment, you're going to click on it and go to the page. Like, oh, who's this Amy girl? She just wrote a really thoughtful thing on my page. I want to see who Amy is, right? And then they get to your page and like, wow, look at this brilliance she's got over here. I'm going to follow Amy now. And so that's how you sort of organically build at that following.
Question I really want to ask you. So to get good at something, you've got to be unafraid to suck at it first. Can you remember what your first post was and how bad was it? I
don't know if it sucked. I mean, I don't, can I reframe that? I think, in every situation, there's an opportunity to learn from something. I'd like to say, reframe that a bit. My social media has changed dramatically over the years, just because I understand it a little bit more than I did before. I don't remember what my first post was. It was on Facebook, and it was probably something silly of me and my daughter or something. I don't recall. But to answer your question, it's a process, and I don't really see things as failures or suckies. I see things as, what is there to learn from this, and how can I make that better next time? And that's really, for me, that's the purpose of being on this planet right now, is like to continually grow every single day and become a better version of ourselves. And so my business, my social media, my workout routine, my diet, my relationships, like every day I actually have this really cool exercise every morning and every night, and I journal. Was I true and honest to the best of my ability today? Is there anything that I could have improved upon? Are there any mistakes that I would like to correct tomorrow? And I answer these questions in my journal. And so like, I look at it like my life, I take a reflection on it every day. Like, what could I have done better today that I didn't accomplish, that I could have done better? And so like that, I look at social media in that regard, like, what could I have done better to make this a little bit added more value for somebody?
And I guess the reason I ask that is because there are a lot of people afraid to get started, because they think they don't know what they're doing, and they think that they're going to post. I mean, if I think about my first LinkedIn post back in 2009, I don't even want to think about my first LinkedIn post back in 2009. But you've just got to get started. I mean, it is a muscle. You have just got to get started.
Yeah, it's just like a diet or an exercise routine or anything else. You have to start by starting. And this imposter syndrome, I don't really know. I'm not really sure what the best psychology is around that. I think if you can reframe it, that there are other people that are just as scared as you, and even if you're able to touch one life, would that be worth it to you? So don't worry about whether you look silly. I know this sounds easy to say, but truthfully, like, what do you have to lose? If you have something good that needs to be shared, if you do something really well, if you have something that's really inspirational, if you can change someone's life in any way, shape, or form, you sort of have a moral obligation to do that, right? And so if you can reframe it from that perspective of like, oh, the universe wants me to do this, like maybe that's a nudge that you need. I don't even know. I don't really think of things that way, because I've really never given an F about what other people think. I'm just sort of like, if you like it, you like it. If you don't, I'm sorry. Like, you have a choice not to follow it. And I don't, I'm not really concerned if you do or don't. I just, I'm always going to do me. And that's really all I think about.
Living and breathing the unapologetic.
That's right.
Yeah. Good for you.
So you truly like, I mean, what's the point? You have one life. Like, what's the point of like second guessing yourself on all these things? Like, what's the point? What do you have to lose? Really? Like, what do you have to lose?
And so tell us about you then. Tell us what's coming next for you. What's coming around the corner, 6, 9, 12 months time.
Yeah. So I have some financial goals that I want to target in the next 6 months to 12 months. I really want to expand and really hone in. I'm launching a new brand within my brand that is very specifically niche driven. We work with coaches. And so I'm creating a brand around the coach's coach, so that I can help other coaches. What I've seen in my journeys with most entrepreneurs, but coaches in particular, they're really good at giving other people's advice, but they're not good at taking their own advice. And so yeah, and I learned this through my own coach, because now I'm working with my coach as he is working with me. It's like, you're really good at telling me to do this shit, but you haven't done jack in 6 months, man. So let's switch the roles for a minute. So a little role reversal here. So I'm creating a new business line called The Coach's Coach, and really original, but it's in your face and sort of like understandable. So that's getting launched, and I'm building my own personal brand out right now, because I really enjoy being in front of audiences and talking, and I love doing podcasts. So I'm going to continue this market. But I like to do lectures and workshops and keynotes and things like that. So I'm really trying to grow that brand, which is one of the reasons I'm doing podcasts, so that I can sort of get some people out there that won't be totally annoyed with me and say, hey, I'd like to have this dude come in and talk to me a little bit. So hopefully I resonate with somebody. And if you like what you hear, holler at me. I can, so that's really what I'm going there. I'm going to get my scuba diver license this year, and I am going to get back on the road to travel, because that's my thing. I travel around the world. I love traveling and being involved in other cultures and seeing the non-American point of view.
And I don't think I'm alone in saying this, but I'm going to be disappointed if there's no asparagus cookbook.
I didn't cook it. It wasn't my asparagus. It was Melissa's. So Melissa has to write the cookbook. I don't know what she did, but Yeah, I'll brand it for her once she writes it.
Yeah, and send us a copy.
Yeah, that would actually be kind of interesting. You might be onto something there. People like weird shit like that.
Give it a try. You can only test it, can't you? Nothing's permanent.
All right, that's our new project. And you asked for the next 12 months. You and me are going to write an asparagus cookbook.
Amazing. I'm down for that.
All right.
Amazing. Thank you for joining us. It's been really great speaking with you. Thank you for sharing your insight and sharing your story. And it's been good speaking with you.
Yeah, I'm sorry we have to end. It's been fun. Thank you for the opportunity to show up with your audience. I hope I added a little bit of value for somebody, for at least one person.
Thanks for listening to the Human CEO podcast. If you enjoyed this conversation, please help us share more leadership content by liking and subscribing. If today's episode got you thinking about unleashing the full potential of your organisation's culture, we've got a great next step for you. Take our free assessment at humanculture.scoreapp.com to see where your organisation stands and discover actionable insights to elevate your workplace culture.